I needed to go to graduate school because it helped me to think more clearly, think more critically. It helped me with my own personal drive, taking ownership of things, and my communication, both oral and written. I think the turning point was the call center role
Mm,
because I saw what was possible. I had been largely exposed to old school type leadership, the command
right.
and control, slam your fist on the table, do what I say. Even if it's small,
Mm.
start small and then you work your way up to bigger things. Because people, to be motivated, you need to be working towards something that's going to improve your future.
Hello, team. Welcome to this week's episode. I have to start with some sad news for all of you. That's you, our audience of leaders, I'm talking about. Despite a constant focus on leadership development, there's a staggering 75% of employees who do not find you inspiring. Sorry to tell you that. So, what's missing? We spend billions on training, yet organizations everywhere are still grappling with turnover, disengagement, stagnant cultures, even. It suggests that we might be focusing on the wrong skills entirely.
Yeah.
This crisis of inspiration is the core of our conversation today as we're joined by Chris Sprague, who left his Fortune 100 career to solve a critical problem. Why are inspiring leaders so rare? In his new book, Lead Without Limits, he reveals how to bridge that gap and unlock unprecedented team potential. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. Chris, welcome to the ET Project.
Oh, Wayne, thank you so much for having me. I know podcasts like writing a book are a labor of love. So thank you for inviting me in, and I appreciate being part of this.
It's always fun when we have the right audience and the right guest. It's yes, a labor, but like you say, labor of love. You have
Yeah.
a very fascinating bio. Um, you have a PhD in toxicology. So I want to start with what the heck is toxicology? It doesn't sound good.
It is the science of what happens when things go wrong.
Hmm,
Um, I was a biology major with a chem minor for undergraduate, and what appealed to me with toxicology was it's really trying to understand what happens when you overwhelm systems. That's when you get cancer. That's when you get a variety of diseases or other genetic abnormalities. Um, and so, yeah, funny story is my father actually also has a background in toxicology.
okay.
So when I figured out that I wanted to go into toxicology, there was part of me that just said, "No, I'm doing what my dad did." But no, in all honesty, it's about the science of when things go wrong. And I'll tell you, I needed to go to graduate school because it helped me to think more clearly, think more critically. It helped me with my own personal drive, taking ownership of things, and my communication, both oral and written. And you don't know it at the time, but after the experience, I'm very grateful for my time at Wisconsin in Madison to go through that and to grow as a person.
When you finished your studies, what did you do? You went into the corporate world, or what was the
I
first step?
did. I did. I actually went into for a couple years. It was a joint venture with ExxonMobil and Shell Oil,
Mhm.
located out in New Jersey. It was a lot of regulatory submissions. So, a lot of times you don't think that like engine oil additives, there's a lot of safety data around those, but there actually is a fair amount that was all through the US EPA
Right.
and some of the European regulatory bodies.
Okay.
And so then from there, I went and joined Abbott, the company in the Chicago area, for Abbott, then AbbVie for the bulk of my career. And had the opportunity. I was very fortunate because very early on, I was put in positions where we were leading some rather large transformations.
Mhm.
And When you're leading transformations, you start to see what goes well and what doesn't go well. And you talk about strong leadership or the impact of poor leadership. It is, I would say, amplified when you're trying to lead a large scale change.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I mean, I remember one opportunity for a global project and just working with people around the world and different cultures and being sensitive to that. But it, the key, I think one of the first things I realized quickly was listening is a very underrated yet powerful tool.
mhm,
And if you're forcing your agenda on people, um, that usually does not go well.
mm,
But that's okay. And then I had the opportunity to lead an enterprise resource planning system go live, SAP, when AbbVie split from Abbott, and that was an incredible opportunity because I worked with people literally from all over the world.
mhm.
Um, and talk about leading without authority.
Right.
At the team I had the opportunity to lead, we were small. It was 4 people, but there were hundreds of people we had to interface with.
Mm,
And when push came to shove, we were the ones that were responsible for all the planning and the execution of these go lives that really handled billions of dollars in inventory and even more in sales.
right.
So, but and if you treat people with respect and treat them as equals, even if they're quote unquote levels below you, people really will rise to that challenge.
Mm,
And that's why I learned that is, talking to shop floor analysts, getting their feedback, talking to supervisors in manufacturing areas or financial supervisors. When you do that and you get their input, it is so powerful because it just gives you such a more robust picture.
yeah.
And those people will then go to bat for you.
Mm,
And it's funny, I saw that time and time again because after that role, I had the opportunity to lead a call center transformation. And I know we talk about this in the book a little bit,
yeah.
but it was a hornet's nest. And look, I was not an expert in call centers, nor did I play one on TV. I did not really understand how they worked, but the people who took the calls every day did. The supervisors did. Um, and that was a great example of if you listen and use that powerful tool to your advantage. So for in this instance, for specifics, we did so it's a team of about 150 people. I had the opportunity to lead the entire team, and I did one-on-ones with everybody, actually
Mm,
multiple rounds, and just said, "Hey, what do we do well? What don't we do well? And if you had my job, what's one thing you'd do right now?" And what we also did was we did roundtables, and our managers did one-on-ones as well, and we collected a master list of all the things we could do. And I'll tell you, Wayne, what was interesting is the majority of stuff was small,
right.
but we did it. We did it. And one of my favorite examples is there's a lady, Kathleen, on the team, but she goes by Kathy. And I'm having a one-on-one with her, and I say, Kathy, what's one thing I can do right now? And she said, could you change my name tag at my desk? It says Kathleen. I'd prefer it to say Kathy. And you know, we walked over to our admin. We got it taken care of that day. For I'd say at least 2 weeks, she was so excited that I actually did it, that I actually listened. And every time she thanked me probably 20 times. And I
Right.
said, Kathy, but it was the gesture because I listened and I took action.
Yeah. We use an expression, curious listening, and that sounds exactly
Mm,
what you're doing.
yeah,
You mentioned a second vital ingredient, in my mind at least, is that listening is the first half of the equation. If you don't
yeah,
do anything with the information or with the
correct.
sharing, then that trust that you start to build is quickly evaporated as well.
Yeah,
So I think, by virtue of the fact that you took action and you took it quickly,
yeah,
you really cemented that following, that belief, that trust. So yeah,
Yeah.
great example.
Yeah.
Yeah, curious to understand what was the pivotal moment for you then to move out of the corporate world? Was there something that triggered the decision?
You know, I think the turning point was the call center role
Mm,
because I saw what was possible. I had been largely exposed to old school type leadership, the command
right.
and control, slam your fist on the table, do what I say. And what I found was an approach where you're actually working to elevate others,
Hmm.
where work to have good communication, you're listening to others, can actually be much more effective than the old school approach. So, for example, in the 2 years that I had the opportunity to lead the turn on the call center, our engagement scores went up by almost 20 points.
Right.
We cut $5 million out of the budget. But honestly, what I was most proud of is we helped almost 40 people grow and improve and do things they didn't think was possible.
Mm,
And that was my first taste because, and then the next role I had was the head of global quality control. And in that instance, it was aligning multiple manufacturing sites and getting them on the same page and building a future and defining the culture. But it was more because of the call center, things started to shift.
hmm.
And I started to realize, and I thought, if I could help leaders, if I could help organizations achieve these type of results,
Right.
and I think I realized, and I know it now, that I can help companies more being external than I can as a compared to being an employee. Because an employee, you've got training, you've got meetings, you've got all these other requirements.
Mm,
Now I can help companies just focus and focus intently on those improvements, the strategy, the turnaround, and help them to be better. And I find that incredibly rewarding.
mm,
So I would say it was that the spark was lit, but
right.
then I remember I was sitting in a meeting in 2023, and all of a sudden something came to me and they said, "What about inspirational leadership? Leadership that really elevates others." And I thought, that's where I want to go.
Mm,
That's what I want to do. And 23 was really the turning point to say, okay, started working on the research for the book. And then after that, I I knew that that's the path I wanted to go.
okay. We're going to dive into a question that I have around the term inspirational in a moment. But
Sure.
before that, I
Yeah.
would like to understand a little bit more about your business, your organization in Luma. The
Yeah.
name itself is quite interesting, but what is it you're doing, and
Yeah. Yep.
where's your
Yeah.
reach?
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks, Wayne. So Enluma is actually a combination of enlighten and illuminate. So our goal is we want to enlighten our clients around inspirational leadership, but we
Mm,
want everything applied. So we want to illuminate a path for everyone to grow. And so what we're doing is, and we'll talk a little bit more about the book, but outlined in the book, we've identified and built ways to measure your leadership potential to inspire your peers, to inspire and elevate direct reports,
mhm,
to elevate an organization where you have multiple levels of people reporting into you. And what we're doing is we're leveraging that for analytics.
right.
So we do workshops where we work with teams to how can they improve collaboration or work with people leaders. How can you elevate your ability to inspire your direct reports? And then we also work with senior leadership teams because it's interesting because the senior leadership team you might jump to, oh, you got to focus on strategy, you got to focus in on the culture.
Mm,
That implies that the senior leadership team works well together. So a lot of times what I'm seeing is we have to work with those senior leadership teams to really encourage them, enable them to work well together, to challenge each other in a healthy way, to understand what each other is doing. Because
mm,
then when you build a multi-year plan, it's going to be more robust because it's not, hey, Wayne's the head of commercial. Wayne knows what he's doing. I'm not going to say anything to Wayne. It's now you and I have seen each other's financials. We've seen each other's thought processes or challenges. Then
Right.
I can say, hey, Wayne, I understand that you're targeting this growth in 3 years, but do you think that's enough?
Mm.
And because that's what you need. And so many leadership teams, it's like the leadership team are like ships passing in the night.
Yeah.
They're working on their own little fiefdoms, but
Yeah.
they're not working really well together. So that's where I'm seeing we can really help companies with that senior leadership team. How do you get them to work really well together? And then
Mhm.
ultimately build out that future strategy, define your culture, and then we can help them to make that sustainable and help to build momentum to get there. And then
Mm.
the other piece that we're working on is we're taking our analytics and actually combining. We've partnered with a AI company out of
Right.
Arizona. And what we're doing is you can take the analytics, the assessments, and you get peer feedback, direct report feedback, or organizational feedback, get the results, and then you actually can see your data and you click on your lowest results and it will say, Wayne, would you like to create a development action for this? You click yes, and then you've got access to an AI coach.
Mm.
And what the AI coach will do is in a discussional format, will say, Wayne, I see that you want to work on maybe making your staff meetings more robust.
Right.
Or maybe it's a peer collaboration piece and you want to work on how do you have more collective impact with your peers. And so then it'll help you to do that. And then we're also have courses that will help you to learn some of the theory and the application around leadership. And so
Mhm.
you can take those at your leisure. And then we're also working to marry that with live coaching as well. So you could
Okay.
have both an AI coach and a live coach. So you could actually have both. And then how do we get them to work really well together?
Right.
So we're excited. We're actually finishing the build now. We're going to start testing with a small group in October.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think what we're trying to do is everything we do, it needs to be applied, and people need to know exactly where they have opportunities to improve.
Mm.
Because if they read the book, if they go through a workshop, if they use our IT tool and they're not sure, then we're wasting their time. It's a lot like you just said, Wayne, with if you listen to people and don't take action,
Yeah.
leadership development has to have clear action plans for every single person.
Mm.
Because if it doesn't, it might be a great experience, but ultimately it's not a good use of your time.
So aligned in what you're saying is very similar to our approach, actually, Chris, which is quite interesting. I didn't know that. So we'll probably talk more about that outside of this conversation. But
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
also a nice segue into the book. I think the book, Lead Without Limits. It's what 3 months now, I think, since the release, but
Yeah.
it comes at a time when probably since the pandemic, we seem to have
Yeah.
established these phrases: great resignation, quiet
Yeah.
quitting, all
Yeah.
of these nice expressions that
Yeah.
keep you amused. But, it's really centered around this widespread burnout and this whole transition that we're
Yeah.
experiencing. Why the book at this moment? Is there a critical point that led you to writing the book?
I think I realize, if you look online, if you scroll through social media, and granted, that may not be the best example, but if you do watch the news in almost any country, there seems to be an overwhelming absence of great leadership.
Hmm.
And it seems in the political area, in the corporate world, where, it's interesting that a lot of companies will complain about millennials and Gen Zs not being loyal to companies. But millennials and Gen Zs are one of the first few generations that they've always seen layoffs and then the stock market go up. So if they're seeing that on a regular basis, why on earth would they be loyal to corporations if they're seeing that corporations are? So I think that the turning point was the lack of leadership in the world, but also the lack of, I would say, I got frustrated because I felt like there weren't a lot of books out there that give you a clear path on how you can be better.
Mm.
And I just look, I'm a self-professed leadership nerd. I love reading leadership books, but I got to a point where kind of at the same time of all of this, I got tired of reading about Fortune 500 CEOs.
Right.
Um, or you finish a book and you think, oh, those are great stories. It was very interesting, but I don't know how I can apply it.
Mm.
Or on the other end, you might read a 300-page book about coaching and feedback and think there's so much in there, I'm not really sure what I need to do. So there seemed the goal was a balance to provide something that's very actionable and applied, but
Mhm.
also to address the challenge that we have right now that we truly do have a leadership crisis. And there's a huge gap out there. And I know you shared the statistic at the start, but McKinsey in 23 did the survey where they surveyed almost 400 companies and they surveyed the employees at these companies and said, are your C-suite executives inspiring and fit for purpose? And only 25% said that their C-suite executives were inspiring and fit for purpose, which means, like you said, 75% is uninspiring.
Mm.
And that's a problem.
Yeah.
And not only a problem, I think it's a huge missed opportunity.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, because if you have leadership that is truly inspiring by providing a clear direction, by providing living the culture, it is just such a game changer for a company or an organization. And it doesn't matter if it's 5 people or 50,000 people.
Mm. Do you have a core theme for the book? Like, if you were to give us your elevator pitch of the book, what's the
Yeah.
central theme, the message running through it?
Yeah, I think the simple theme is inspirational leadership is about helping others become more and achieve more. And in the
Mhm.
book, we want to be very clear on what that means, but also how you can get there, how
Right.
anyone can do it. And in the book, you can start right now with becoming an inspirational leader.
I mentioned a little bit earlier, Chris, when we
Yeah.
talk about this word inspirational, there's so many parallel words that get thrown around as
Yep.
well. And
Yep.
for me, it's always important to establish a distinction between what I'm referring to when I say a word.
Yeah.
So there's words
Yep.
like transformational, there's words like
Yep.
servant leadership. You talk about inspirational leadership. Is there a definition that you have around
Yeah.
inspirational, and how does that differ to the
Yeah.
others?
Yeah. And Wayne, it's a funny question because when we were writing the book, we searched high and low, and we kept coming back to this old quote by
Right.
John Quincy Adams. And we've tweaked it a little bit for our definition, but if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you're an inspirational leader.
Okay.
And that it really resonated because it's about action. It's about positive intent, helping others to become more. Also, what's not there is a position of authority.
Hmm.
Suggests that anybody can be an inspirational leader if you're helping others to dream more and learn more and do more and become more. So that's where we landed, and that's where we leaned in really heavily with that and how we define inspirational leadership.
Right.
And then we wanted to take those and then how can we apply that so anyone can see what it is, but then learn how to become one.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the quote or the definition. You've mentioned already a few areas like command and control, form
Yeah.
of leadership. Do you have a list in your mind or in the book that talk about some of the missteps of old school leaders and old school
Oh,
leadership?
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is we have known for decades
Mm,
that this old school tough leadership actually inhibits productivity.
right.
It people are more likely to get sick, they're more likely to make mistakes. Um, psychologically, if you have a leader who's chewing you out and pushing you really hard, most people are going to immediately trigger that fight or flight response,
Mm,
which means they're most likely, because it's their boss, going to want to get out of the situation. As a result, what happens is people will do just enough. They'll do just enough to make that boss happy. They'll do just enough so that boss goes away. And for whatever reason, we need to move away from this
mm,
because it's almost like, and I haven't put my finger on this, it's almost like we see that great business and being truly successful in business is like going to war
mm,
and being in the military. And you're going to chew people out and you're going to tell them what to do.
right.
But what's funny is the military is not even like that anymore. In the great book Turn the Ship Around, which I highly recommend, um, the author talks about how he took over. He was preparing to take over the number one submarine, and Wayne, I don't know if you've read the book. Um, he's preparing to take over the most advanced submarine in the U.S. Navy,
Mm,
and at the last minute, they said, "Oh, by the way, David, no, no, you're not getting that one. You're getting the lowest performing, oldest submarine in the Navy." But what he did was he realized that he didn't know anything about this new boat. He knew about the modern one, so he had to rely on his people. So he empowered them to come up with ideas. He empowered them to drive. He was, in a lot of cases, sounding board, but it really illustrates that we need to let go of this old school command and control because even in the military, it's not effective.
right.
But for whatever reason, it is the default in business and it's actually embracing mediocrity. And
I
we
guess with a
really need
lot,
to
we see it on TV, right? We see
all the
it in
time.
the military films where the tough
Yep.
drill sergeants are there screaming at their people,
Yeah.
and it becomes like probably that subconscious
Yeah.
default setting
Yeah.
that we see and we think, well, that must be the model. That must be the way that we have to act
Yeah.
to get people to follow what we want them to do. And as you say, certainly in the 21st century, um, this doesn't work anymore.
No.
This doesn't work.
No.
And one of the
Yeah. And
hardest things we find with our clients is, particularly the older leaders, is to make that transition from being a 20th century to a 21st century leader. Yeah.
yep. Yeah. And it's not impossible.
No.
It's not impossible, but it's if you can help them to change their approach and if they see great results, even better results with their new approach versus their old approach,
Hmm.
then the proof's in the pudding. But yeah, no, the other thing I think is interesting is I Gen Z, I don't think is going to tolerate the old school leadership. They're just going to leave.
Yeah.
Um, and some of the research I've seen that suggests that Gen Zs are of the survey participants, they're actually saying they don't want to be people leaders because of unnecessary stress, lack of work-life balance. They'd rather be subject matter experts,
Really.
which is yeah, which is fascinating because look, I'm Gen X, and I know our generation a lot of ways was okay, I wanted to be a people leader, I wanted to move up the ladder. Um, But now we're starting to see a different approach where there's more about meaning, more about purpose. Why am I doing this? Are you supporting my growth and development? And so leaders are going to need to adapt. Otherwise, they're going to miss out on great talent.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I'm deep into research at the moment on relevance, staying relevant through
Yeah.
not only technology but longevity. So we're all living longer, we're working longer, we're shifting from that three-phase career to the multi-phase
Yep.
career. And one of the methodologies actually suggests we shift away from that subject matter expert to become more holistic, more broad.
Mhm.
We still have
Yeah.
our expert area, but we also need to have that associated knowledge points around that. So that's quite an interesting. Was there anything really surprising through the research or that came out of doing the research that you think
Yeah.
is a good lesson?
Yeah. When we were starting the research, one of the pieces was if, as we define inspirational leadership, we thought, okay, if someone is helping you to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more,
Right.
you're learning. And we know people are likely to be happier and more engaged if they're learning. And if you're doing more, then you're achieving more, right? So we thought, how often are people involved in groups that achieve incredible results and people happily worked hard? So we thought, maybe it's 50%.
Right.
It was 90% of participants, and this was over 400 people that we surveyed and interviewed, had experienced at least once in their career.
Mm,
So I was floored. And what's interesting is we continue to survey people post publishing the book, and that 90% seems to be consistent in multiple groups that we've talked to. What the other part was interesting, we thought, okay, what's driving these groups? And we thought it's got to be communication and it's got to be achieving results because you have to talk to each other and achieve results. And I would say that for both of those, we were slightly right.
mm,
Um, where we were really surprised was people came back and they said, I was focused on seeing the team be successful. It wasn't about me, it was about the team. So this notion of collective success, and Wayne, you brought this up a little bit, a we before me, and having that focus of what can the team do? What can the organization do? That was a surprise, and it was very common. The other was that was a surprise for us was people would say, we trusted each other,
mm.
but then we could also push and challenge each other. I wanted to push and challenge my peer so that they could do more, they could be better.
Right.
That one, I think I did not see coming at all
Mm,
because you think, okay, I get the team piece, they're working together, they're communicating, they're working, but it was, the utilization of healthy friction where you're helping to improve each other, but it's based on trust.
yeah.
Uh, the other piece was we call it with the glue, is there's this consistent piece of having fun, of enjoying yourself. And I think about the leadership challenge, the book where the authors surveyed over 5,000 people, and there was two consistent pieces with every time in those 5,000 stories when someone was at their leadership best. And Wayne, you probably already know this. The first one was they worked hard. Well, that doesn't surprise anybody, right? The second one in every single story was that people enjoyed themselves.
Mm,
They were energized by what they were doing. And you know that makes a ton of sense because you ever had a job that you didn't like?
not me.
Sunday afternoons. Yes, Sunday afternoons are terrible
Mm,
because you don't want to go to work on Monday. You don't want to do it. And and if you're a bad leader and you're causing that impact on hundreds of people,
yeah.
shame on you. But so going back to your question, I think the surprises were the view of the collective success, but then also challenging each other to be better.
So there's a couple of theories that support that. Of course, Patrick
Yep.
Lencioni with his dysfunctional teams and his
Yep.
pyramid, he has trust at the bottom, and then of course the next is that conflict where that
Yep.
environment exists,
Yep.
and then you have psychological safety, which is built around that whole premise as well. So that's in a very good company with a lot of well recognized theories. I was wondering while you were talking there, from a leader's perspective, it's actually easier to work with a team because it doesn't take as much effort. You may not get it right, but
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is there a need to not only focus on the collective, but to focus on the individual as a leader?
Yeah. Yeah. There absolutely is. And here's why is if say you have five direct reports and you work with those five direct reports and say, if the five of you work really well together, this is
Mm,
what can be achieved. At the individual level, though, you have to define who's accountable for what.
right.
Because otherwise, if it's a collective output, you may have one or two individuals, if they're not clear on their expectations, if they're not clear on what they should be doing, they may be perceived as riding on the coattails of others.
Mm,
So there absolutely has to be a balance. You need to have that individual accountability, individual clarity of what people are doing so they can contribute to the collective success.
right.
Um, but there absolutely has to be a balance.
Mm. One of the things I heard you mention earlier was that when you sit with the people, you ask them, what can you do to help them? How big is questions or are
Mm.
questions as part of leadership in today's
Yeah.
world? I think the first time we spoke about Dr. Marley Adams' book, Change Your Questions,
Yeah.
Change Your Life.
Yep.
For me,
Absolutely.
that was a pivotal moment in my leadership career reading that book.
Me
Um,
too.
but how big are questions in your mind?
If you're coming from a place of curiosity, as a leader, it's more powerful to have curious questions than it is to have the answer.
Hmm.
Because if I can give you an example, I had a data analyst that I worked with who reported into me, and he would always come to me with a problem, expecting me to give him the answer. And I, it was kind of lazy on his part, but that's what he was used to. And finally, I said, dude, I'm not going to give you the answer.
Hmm.
Here's what I need you to do. When you have an issue, I'd like to understand what your thoughts are. What do you think the possibilities are? And then where you think we should go. And at first, he struggled a little bit with that. But then after a while, I noticed he knew I was expecting it. And as a leader, if you start to tap into that,
Hmm.
and a great example of that's the book Multipliers, where
Right.
Liz, she does a great job of calling out that. But if you're approaching things with curiosity and you're asking questions, what it does is a few things. One is it gives people ownership.
Hmm.
Because Wayne, if you're coming to me as the big boss and you're saying, "Hey, Chris, what do you think?" You've now put an invisible pressure on me that I want to deliver because I don't want to let you down because you just treated me like an equal. So that also, from a more subtler piece, encourages the organization to search for the best solution as opposed to what do you think is going to make the leader happy?
Hmm.
Because I'm sure we've all seen those organizations where the senior leader is not approaching it with curiosity. They're just looking for people to validate the theory that they already have.
Right.
And so they're not approaching it with what could be possible. How could we do this differently? And so with those curiosity-based questions, they really can be an incredibly powerful tool in a toolkit for a leader to really unlock the potential of an organization. I'll tell you, I've had multiple opportunities in my career where we would have a challenge and we'd get a small group together and I'd describe the challenge and just say, hey, could you come up with a plan in 2 weeks?
Hmm.
I don't have a plan. If you would come up with a plan, that would be great. And I will tell you 19 times out of 20, they came up with a better plan than I could have ever thought of.
Yeah.
And it's a way that as leaders, if we ask those questions also of should I be doing this or should a team be working on this? Because the mediocre leaders think they have to be involved in everything. The great leaders say, no, this is actually an opportunity for someone to do a better job than me.
Mm.
And that is a strong dose of humility. But if you have that humility and lean in with those curiosity-based questions, oh, it is such a powerful combination.
The book itself, Chris, is really a practical guide I found for
Yeah.
leaders, and I think it's one of the challenges that we all have when we're trying to support a leader is every leader is at a different stage in their
Yep.
journey. And
Yep.
what I liked about the book is the guide offers emerging leaders as well as C-suite leaders
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
opportunities to learn and grow and find ways to be more inspirational. And I think the book is really a great tool to have sitting beside you as you go through. Are there some actionable things that our audience can take away if they haven't read the book? Obviously, the first thing
Yeah.
is to go out and buy the book. But apart
Yep.
from that, are there some actionable steps that leaders
Yep.
can put into practice tomorrow?
You know, we can take this from a few different lenses. How about we do two or three?
Yeah.
One is, and this is a hard pill to swallow, is if you have, from an individual contributor perspective, working with peers, think about that one peer that is hard to work with, because we
Mm.
all have them, right?
Yeah.
Think about that one peer and ask yourself one question. Am I contributing to the problem?
Mhm.
Because it's easy to say, hey, Wayne's a jerk.
Yeah.
But it's another thing to say, am I actually contributing to the difficulty that I have with Wayne? The other thing you can do is we found in the book that people were constantly communicating. Cost nothing, very easy. Anyone can do this, whether you lead an organization or working with peers. Think about information you have that someone may not have and
Mhm.
share it with them proactively without them asking. Just to say, hey, Wayne, I was in this project meeting last week. I bet Wayne could benefit from this. Hey, Wayne, you may have heard this. Hey, I just wanted to share this. You didn't ask for it, but what happens a lot of times is people say, oh, Chris is sharing things with me thinking I may need them. I should also think about what Chris may need.
Yeah.
And so it can encourage, and it's a very small act, but yet it can have such a big outcome of just sharing information without people asking. And then I would tell you that one of the last ones is, do you have something you're working towards? I think as a leader, it's so critical to be working towards something aspirational, something better. Are you fixing a problem? And if you can't answer that question yes immediately, then you need to sit down and think, okay, what should we be fixing? What should we be addressing? Even if it's small,
Yeah.
start small and then you work your way up to bigger things. Because people, to be motivated, you need to be working towards something that's going to improve your future. And if you're not actively working towards that today, it's going to feel like every day it's just rinse and repeat. It's okay, today's Monday. I come in tomorrow. It's going to be Tuesday. Well, for you, it's already Tuesday. Um,
Mhm.
but you know what I mean? If you don't have that item, so I'd say, yeah, sharing information, thinking about the collective, thinking about what's out there and what could be better. Those are small things you can do right now that you don't have. They don't cost anything, but they can help you to progress your journey. And Wayne, like you said, in the book, we've got even more suggestions of things you can do to elevate your leadership and
Yeah.
help you to be an inspirational leader. So even more is in the book.
So definitely get out there, get a copy of the book. One of the messages that comes across very clearly to me, Chris, listening to you, for the last 40 odd minutes, is it's not always about the big things. It's about those little things and they add up. And taking
Yeah.
those small
Yeah.
steps, identifying the little things that can make a difference. collectively over
Yep.
time, and with the right people, have a huge impact. And the
Yep.
outcome is better engagement, more
Yep.
productivity, all of the things that we all want. But it doesn't have to be rocket science. We don't have to have that magic formula
Nope.
if we're just
Nope.
open and curious. And that's the takeaway for me listening to you today. So thank you for that. You've
No,
now got the
Wayne,
book
you're
out of
welcome.
the world. Where do you go from here? What's next? What's next on the mission?
Um, yeah, working on the book. I'm also I've started working on a second book.
Okay,
That's it's I had a health challenge this year, which helped me to understand that um, our time is finite,
right.
but that is actually for me has been incredibly liberating because if you know you have limited time, um, then it forces you to think about what your priorities are, what is meaningful to you, who is
Mm,
meaningful to you, and what's the impact that you want to have.
right.
And what in researching for the second book, I found that in almost every religion they talk about the philosophy of impermanence and how things are constantly changing. Even your perceptions, your thoughts over the years, they will change.
Yeah.
Um, but it's actually, if you understand that, you can really connect with and handle the world in a better place. So more to come on that one. It's yeah, that one is it's very interesting. I find it very interesting. It's a little bit different than typically, obviously lead without limits implies limitless potential, but taking a little bit different approach actually to be more
Mm.
motivating to understand that our time is finite.
Chris, been incredibly insightful discussion. Thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing such powerful ideas and bring the book to the world. The book again, Lead Without Limits. What's the full title, by the way? I don't think we've mentioned the full title. Do you know the full title, top of your head?
Yes. Yep. Actually, I've got so lead without limits, how inspirational leaders make the improbable possible.
The improbable possible. I like that byline there. Where can people go and buy it? It's on Amazon, I know.
Yep.
Anywhere else?
It is on most retailers, it's going to be there, most online. On Amazon, it's both in the paperback and Kindle versions.
Okay.
Um, they can also go to our website, enlumagroup.com, and they can be connected with ordering it there as well.
And where are people able to connect with you if they want to find out more about what you're doing and maybe
Yep.
do some work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, LinkedIn,
Mm,
under my name, so Chris Sprague, or the Enluma Leadership Group. And also, I'm on Substack as well. I tend to put out articles there and then also have a YouTube channel.
mm. We'll definitely link to all of those. So, Chris, great connecting. Look forward to. We'll probably have to come back together for the second book release. So I look forward to that. But thanks for being on the ET project. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, Wayne, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button below and click on the bell icon so I can pop up in your feed occasionally with a great tip for your ultimate growth.